So what we're going to do now is we're going to add test coverage to this AltGen API project. We have tests written, and now we just want to be able to have or be able to report on how much of our application code is covered by our tests. So let's go ahead and open up the project. And the nice thing is, since we use the XUnit template from the .NET News CLI, the XUnit test already has the coverlet collector in here. I am going to make sure it's up to date though. So let's open another tab. Let's open another tab. Make this a little bigger so we can all see it. AltGen. Let's disable read line really quick. Let's change into our test project. And then let's say .NET add, and the name of it is add package coverlet.collector. I just want to make sure we have the latest version. I think it bumped it. Yeah, it bumped it up to 0.4. All right, now what we need to do is, now that coverlet's here, it's there, so we can use it to collect information. But what I want to do is I want the coverage to be reported on every time we run our tests. So as part of building our project and then running our tests, I want that report to be generated. So coverlet, let's go over to browser. Where is it? Right here. And coverlet code coverage. Here's the repo for that, in case you're curious. But they have an MS build integration, so that's what we're interested in. So let's find that. So here's our NuGet package, and they have obviously some documentation here, but I've used this before, so I'm gonna kind of walk through the process I usually go through to set this up. So what I'll do is I'll just install this package. Where am I? Got too many windows going on here. We'll add that package. So now we've got coverlet collector and we've got coverlet MS build integration. And then the other package we need, well, actually, I don't think I have to have it as a package because I have it as a global tool. So there's the other tool you're going to need, you may already have it installed, you may not. There is a tool called report generator. And so this tool is going to be able to take the information that coverlet collects and generate us some nice pretty reports. So we're also going to need this installed. Now there's two ways to install it. You can add it as a dependency, as a package, right? And then that requires that when you execute it, you have to actually specify this path to the report generator. What I prefer to do is I prefer to just install it as a global tool. So where is it? See, report generator global tool. So what I prefer to do is I prefer to use the global tool. So I've already done this on my machine, but just like this. I think it's already installed. Looks like, oh, okay, cool. I already had it installed, but I got an update. Okay. So now with that in place, now we have to actually configure, configure coverlet, and then we also are gonna add a target, an execute command in our CS proj that basically says, okay, first thing we do is we want to collect that coverage. Then after we collect the coverage as part of our build, we also want to then generate the coverage report after obviously we've run our test and the coverage has been outputted and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and set up the configuration. And again, I don't remember this from memory. It's just because I've done it before. So I'm gonna show you how I configure Coverlet to work. So this is all predicated on the fact that you're using the MS Build integration. There's other ways you can configure Coverlet. You can pass it the collector. You can pass it as part of your command line arguments when you run .NET tests, but this is the way I prefer to do it. I think it's a little bit easier to work with myself than remembering all the right commands. So we'll add a new property group, and in here we're going to put all of our configurations. So we're going to have, the first one's going to be set to collect coverage true, just like Copilot suggested. So that means when we run our .NET tests, we are going to actually collect coverage. Then we're going to say coverlet output format, no, output is going to be in this directory, test results / coverage, like, well, yeah, like that. So that's going to tell Coverlet where to store the coverage that it collects as we're running our tests, what directory. It'll create it for us too if we don't have it. Then we have to pick the output format. There's Coverlet supports several different output formats. The one we're interested in is called Cobertura. I don't know how to say it. Don't count me off points for that. And then the next thing I do is I usually will do what should be included as part of the coverage. So by default, I usually just do everything under my target applications. Yeah, exactly. Just like this. I usually say include. So that means we're going to include everything under the AltGen API namespace. Since this is the AltGen API test assembly, we want to include coverage for everything that's in the project that this code is actually testing, or this project is actually testing. And then the one thing you can also add here is you can also add an exclude by file. There's a couple attributes, but you can add exclude by file. And I will actually usually add program.cs, just because typically you don't have a way of actually covering the code that's written in there. I think I actually have I already have this annotated. So you can also use annotations to exclude things from your code coverage, but I don't think I actually need this if I'm going to put that in my CS proj. So let me remove that. Okay, that should be everything we need for Coverlet to collect our coverage. So let's write not quit, just write all. Okay, so now if we run our test, let's run our test suite .NET test. We should see, obviously we should see the build, we should see our tests happen, and assuming all of our tests pass, which looks like some of them didn't. Oh, the model is overloaded. Please try again later. Okay, so our end-to-end tests are failing because the system is overloaded. Okay, fair enough. So it wasn't something I did. It was just the fact that their API is down essentially. Okay, so we can still go forward with demoing the test coverage setup. So what we can do is, instead of including our end-to-end test, we can just exclude it. So when we run .NET test, we can say .NET test filter and we can say doesn't contain this. So put that here, and we'll say, instead of integration test, we'll say end to end. There we go. So that ran everything but our end-to-end tests. And then here you'll see is our coverage. So this is coverlet working, where it basically looked at all of our test code, looked at the lines of our actual program code, and then it spits out a level of coverage by line, by branch, and by method. And I'm guessing that these numbers are going to be higher if I included my end-to-end test as part of the test run, but for now this works. However, the thing you'll say here is, well, this is helpful. What I see on the screen is helpful, but it would also be helpful if I had some kind of more visual, more aesthetic report where I could probably go in and see, okay, what branches haven't I covered, what methods haven't I covered, what lines haven't I covered. And so that's where this report generator tool comes in. And so that's where we're going to go in and further modify our CS proj for our test project to basically have a little executable command that's going to run after a particular target. Whoop. So what we'll put here is, oh, whoops, this is not, we don't want those, we want target. Target, like that. And then our target is actually going to have a name, and we're going to call it generate HTML coverage report. And then we're going to say we want to generate it after targets is going to equal generate coverage result after test. And then we are going to add an exe, which is going to have a command. And I think Copilot has that almost right. Yes, so test results. So this is where we're basically telling the report generator, which is that binary global tool we have installed. We're telling it where it can find our coverage reports, which it can find them in our test folder, right? So if we look at our tree over here, we can see we now have this test results folder. If we open that, we have a coverage folder, and we have our coverage XML right there. So that's what the report generator is going to read in to build this HTML report. Then we're going to tell it where to write that report. So in this case, what's the target dir? We're going to write it back into that test results folder, back into the coverage folder under HTML. And then the one thing I am going to specify here is I'm going to add another flag, which is report types, and that's going to be HTML dark. And that needs a quote around it, like that. And you may be wondering, Stephen, how did you figure this out? Or like, how did you find all these? Like, how did you find how to configure coverlet? And how did you find out how to use the report generator? I just purely referenced their documentation. So report generator, like I showed you, has a website that you can use. It has all the getting started, usage, how to apply it, all that good stuff. See, here's the usage. So you can actually kind of like interactively walk through building the command, right? So where are your reports located? Where do you want your HTML to be written? You can specify the report type, right? HTML or HTML dark. It's got several different types of reports that it will generate for you that you can use. But in my case, I just want the HTML one. And then the coverlet MS build configurations, coverlet MS build, CS proj config. Let's go to that NuGet package, and that's all covered here in their documentation. So you can see They actually show using report generator to do the configurations. But yeah, so I just read the documentation. I mean, I don't want to try to make myself out to be like a genius or like that. I knew exactly how to do this and remember it all by memory. No, I just referenced the documentation, and then this is pretty much this. I use this same configuration really again and again from project to project. So once you have it, you can just copy paste it when you set it up for the next guy. So with all this here now, we should be able to go back, we should be able to write this all out, and we should be able to go back here and run that same test command, and everything should pass. It should generate our coverage, and then we should see another output where it actually generates the report, which I don't see that. So what did I type wrong? Report generator. Generate coverage result after test. Did it not? Oh, it did. Yep. So it did write it out. So it just must have happened so fast. Let me regenerate. So I think you can see it over here on the right. It spun for a minute and said generate HTML coverage report, and that means it actually outputted that HTML file. So now what we can do is we can open that up. So let's just use a little node package, npx live server, and we'll say test results, coverage, HTML. We'll just serve that folder. And there you go. And so now you have this really pretty HTML file, and you can use it to kind of explore the different parts of your coverage that aren't covered or are covered. So like here, I can see the Gemini request. It seems to think that I never actually construct the Gemini request, but I do. I think the Indian tests would cover this, I believe. But you can go, like, if you have a really big project, right, you can see how helpful this would be to kind of find the edge cases that your test cases don't cover. And you can actually group this by namespace, right? So you can actually, let's see. I guess I just have the one namespace. Oh, right here. So you can group it by assembly, by namespace, and then you can go deeper. So you can go different levels. So you can kind of see how each namespace is even covered. So this is really helpful. What I use this a lot for is I'll write the test, I'll do initial implementation, and then I'll run my tests, and then I'll generate this report, and I'll start perusing the places in the report that aren't covered, and that starts to identify, oh, I need to add a test to cover that edge case. I need to add a test to cover this edge case. And it makes it you can add tests with much more precision and with much more logic, and have a better understanding where the gaps are. And then you can also make informed decisions about, do I need to add a test for that edge case? Am I okay accepting that those lines aren't covered for a particular set of reasons? Maybe it's just a really far out there edge case. Maybe it's not high risk. Maybe it's low traffic, something like that. But just a really helpful thing to set up with any .NET test project or any .NET project in general. So you're not kind of writing tests blind. I mean, obviously you're writing tests against some implementation that you're implementing, but this turns it into something visual that you can see, and you can start to actually have some information about, oh, maybe there's something here that I shouldn't, like, here's a good example where I am obviously testing this method pretty thoroughly, but there's a case I haven't covered, which is, what if this throws? Like, what if this is actually null? What if the resource isn't there? We're going to throw this exception. So should I have a test that does that? And what would it take to be able to have that test, right? I probably can't be calling assembly.get executing assembly straight from within this getter, because I have no way of mocking out or controlling the response to get manifest resource stream, right? So I might have to actually introduce some sort of wrapper around it to be able to mock that test, and then you can make a decision for yourself. Is that worth it? Should I spend that time, or am I okay with that particular branch being uncovered? So that's how you set up test coverage for your .NET projects. The three tools again that I used are coverlet ms build, or I guess coverlet the collector, coverlet ms build integration, and then the report generator to actually generate our HTML report. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you guys put that to use and get something out of it as well. I know I have. I know once I figured out how to do this, it's one of the things I love most about writing programs in .NET is I know I'm going to have a really great test experience, and I'm going to have a really great test coverage experience, and I can set it up all pretty quickly and get it up and running, and I'm off to the races. So hopefully you find it the same.